Alkenhorst, and a couple of Goodyear runners as well, the two Ferraris, that one of which started so well on the front row. Dries van Toor, car number 1, second place. About a minute separates him and the race leader, Maximilian Goertz.
He's getting caught though by van der Linde relatively quickly, actually. Dropped 20 seconds to him last lap round. Traffic plays into that, of course, but dropped 20 seconds to both van der Linde, Hasse and Yellerly as well that time through. So Dries van Toor needs to find a bit of speed, and we did see the Audis struggling a bit in relation to the other cars in the full wet conditions, although that said, Kelvin van der Linde pursuing in behind is of course in the same chassis. So Dries van Toor currently getting caught a bit. The man not getting caught a bit is Maxi Götz at the front of the field, who is holding similar pace to all of his pursuers. But I suspect the battle that's going to rage next for us will be between Hasse Yellerly when he gets involved with decent pace, van der Linde all catching Dries van Toor for second place.
Maxi Goertz looking like he's got the blues and twos on there, and that's because it's the positional numbers that appear as you look at the car top left of the windscreen, but they flash every couple of seconds and illuminate the road in front of him. So that's to enable the cars from the lower classes to realise that there is a really quick SP9 car approaching, and they can make their own arrangements to hopefully part the waves for Maxi Goertz. It's not always possible. You've got to stick to, you know, your natural racing line. Last thing you want to do is end up in your own accident because you're trying to make a way clear for the SP9s, and it's really the responsibility of the faster car to find the safe way by.
The lights, as I understand, are dished out generally after the ADAC qualifying race to the top 30 participants.
That's how I understood it as well, yes.
Was there an ADAC qualifying race this year?
For this race, no.
So how have they given them out?
It's a very good question. Now we had, thanks for asking me that right at the end of my stint. We had 13 pre-qualifiers because top qualifying was split into 2 sessions this year. 13 that were already put into top qualifying 2, the second session. And that was all done on sector split times rather than results in previous VLN races. So it's a little bit like how the Indy 500 is done and qualifying for that.
A bit like how drivers are graded, sort of thing. Take a look at all of the stints and maybe take a bit of a view. Yeah.
So we got one sheet with the 13 cars already pre-qualified, and then everybody else in SP9 and the Glickenhaus, which is in SPX, and one extra car as potentially eligible for the second sector, but you had to finish in that first session top 4 because there were top 4 places up for grabs to make it 17 cars then gunning it for pole position. And that made 31 when you add them all together. So I just wonder whether the blue lights went to those 31 cars.
So had to go down into the middle of Adenauer and buy another blue light then.
Yeah, find the shop that delivers them the black market of blue lights. And they're very, very useful in the race, definitely give you an advantage.
That's Fred. He does our tyres at United Autosports.
Oh, good stuff. From Michelin.
Yep.
And he is literally hand-cutting tyres in the garage there, adding a bit of extra tread to a wet weather Michelin tyre, ready to for that to be bolted onto an SP9 car in the near future.
Yeah, we've seen Michelin, we've seen a lot of different tyre manufacturers doing that. Potentially just sharpening up the grooves of the tread. Not something I'm particularly used to, honestly. I've not seen tyre guys taking Stanleys to my tyres too much in the past. But yeah, we have seen all manufacturers of tyres doing that, so that's not a Michelin thing.
No,
it's a tyre man thing.
But good to see that the craftsmanship is not dead, very much alive in the Nürburgring pit lane. And you dread to think how many times he's got to do that too. It might just be for this phase of the race, of course.
I wonder if he's just taking where the tyre is overworked. They tend to fluff around the edges of the tread block. And I wonder if he's just basically resharpening the edges of the tread block so they get the water clearance so they can use that set of wets again. Obviously, a massive number of wet tyres required. And although there's not necessarily an allocation limit of wet tyres, there are often only so many in the truck. And it's literally that. You talk to your tyre supplier and go, how many wets have we got each? Because the understanding that the entire race might be wet I would imagine would be filling some tyre engineers with dread about the pure number of wet tyres available for all of the various cars. And being open on tyres, the tyre compounds and constructions used tend to be the more expensive ones as well.
What happened a moment or two ago at the end of the lap, there was a car completely sideways. It was one of the Bayer concept Porsches. I thought for a moment it could have been either 44 or 33 from Team Falcon, but wasn't quite the right livery for that. Patrick Kolb arriving on the scene in the Uber Motorsport machine. He's already had a big moment down at the first corner, which ended up putting the 25 car into the gravel, misjudging his braking point, and nearly T-boning another Porsche there. Thankfully, that incident was avoided. That's the second time in this race now where we've had a car at 90 degrees to the direction of travel at Tiergarten. Really don't like to see that. It's a narrow enough part of the track before things like that happen.
It is an area where it's easy to spin on the power, though, and that's what we have seen there both times with cars trying desperately to keep the car out of the wall, but then, of course, you end up marooning your car in the middle of the road, and that's the issue that we've seen. One of the Toyotas parked in the pit box, the 120 car, looking like they're doing a little bit of servicing work with this car. It's the Corolla. Yeah,
2 Corolla Altis brought to the racetrack by Toyota Gazoo Racing. You might not know that team name from elsewhere in motorsport after a cracking result last weekend at the 24 Hours Le Mans, and indeed in the World Rally Championship as well in Turkey. But this is the Team Thailand arm of Gazoo Racing, bringing 2 Corolla Altises to the ring once again. Certainly not the first time we've seen these 2 cars. You tune to RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. We are now a quarter of the way in. So much time still to go, but that is a little milestone, nevertheless, for everybody involved. I'll leave you in the good company of Alex Brundle as Johnny Palmer stepping out and Joe Bradley soon to join. Thanks, Johnny, and we'll be certainly hearing you a few times later on, just for a few more hours of this 24-hour race, as we watch the work still continuing on that Toyota Corolla, and a bit of windscreen cleaning as well. But I'm not sure that'll be the absolute intention of this particular pit stop, inside and out. Bit of Rain-X as well, no doubt, to make sure that doesn't do too much fogging up through the next stint. And it's this work, this kind of environment. It's not just a small team environment. This is what you got, whether you got a GT3 car or whether you brought your Toyota along. The area of pits that you're using is absolutely the same, come big or small team. Big teams tend to get their elbows out a little bit more, as we see our leader heading through the Grand Prix loop. He looks to have potentially stopped slightly, but there's still a bit of standing water around the Grand Prix loop as he comes up to a little bit of traffic. And Joe Bradley joins me in the box. What do you know, Joe?
Well, it all kicked off when I left, didn't it? I've been watching things happen, and it's a bit of a sad tragedy for me to see the number 4 go out, because good mate of mine, Adam Christodoulou, was due to get in that car at 10:30 tonight, and he's just not going to get in the car, is he? Because I have spoke to him, and I said, so have you had any feedback as to what caused it? He said it was netcode, which is an esports virtual racing thing. But in fairness, it kind of did look like a bit like that, didn't it? The car just veered off to the right and struck the barrier, didn't it? It was a bit odd.
Certainly did. Netcode, of course.
Yeah.
It's when that's when the 2 computers get confused over where both the cars are, isn't it?
And yes. And we whinge about it because someone's in California and I'm in the UK, and our computers are not sorting it out too realistic enough. I mean,
well, he didn't sort it out too realistically enough, and
no,
well,
shame
he
that.
Very realistically arrived in the barrier on the exit of the small carousel, unfortunately. And as you say, real shame for Adam and that whole team. He's not going to get a run tonight.
And also, Alex, we were just talking before you came on for your stint about tyre choice, because at that time the track condition was erring on the verge of dryness, and slick tyres being an option. We were puzzled, weren't we, by the leading Mercedes going on to wets, but then it dawned on us, aha, they've got access to more accurate weather forecasting. And
sorry, just watching that white windscreen wiper on the leading car there, it looked for all the world like a bit of tyre flapping around out the left-hand side, like he just picked up a puncher. But you're absolutely right. We were confused, bemused by cars seemingly staying on wets. I perhaps thought it could be something to do with passing traffic, which can be really difficult here. But if you've got a load of rain on the radar, you then, you know, there are two questions really. You ask your engineer, how long is this rain for and how hard?
Yeah,
and if it's going to come in again, then you have to make the decision that's going to be right, not now, but in an hour from now when you've done your 9 laps.
But then, so what we effectively had was the number 9 current leader, Maxi Goetz in the car at the moment. We had the number 9 go out on wet tyres on what was a drying track, and it was a good lap and a half before we went to before we got some precipitation. How easy is it to destroy a set of wets on a dry track?
Very, very easy. It's very easy, especially over that kind of distance. You've got to remember here that you're always turning the car. You're always pushing the tyre and turning the car. So actually being on the wrong tyre here can be absolutely brutal, as that looked like a penalty, didn't it, for the number 19 19 Porsche, just parked at the end of the pit lane. Now he's gone in to continue with his stop. So that's a bit of a hold up for a car very much in the hunt. And yeah, I mean, you can route a set of wets in 1 lap at the moment. They'll be over and done with. Oof, big spin as well on the way down through the Hudson back there. Managed nicely by Christopher Hasse. It's all going off everywhere.
Yeah, we kind of were suspicious that it was going to be a very eventful race. The Nürburgring 24 hours always is, but just to add water and it becomes a very, very, very treacherous exercise for everybody, and perhaps you could argue even more so for the slow categories, because they've not just got to look in front of them, but also be very, very aware what's behind.
Well, the slow categories have less information, have less tyre options, have less engineering capability, have less choice with regards to the setup of their car, and potentially, not always the case, certainly, but potentially less knowledge and experience of the conditions. And yes, it can be an absolutely massive challenge if you just don't have that information to play with, as we see Sheldon van der Linde fighting very hard with the number 5 Audi. There are those strobe lights down into turn 4 on the Grand Prix loop, and managing to find his way past. But yes, certainly the slower categories are those that will be suffering, and also will be suffering from any mistakes in the fast stuff as well.
And pit stops aplenty, a very crowded pit lane, but not as crowded as we are used to in the Nürburgring 24 hours. Only 97 cars took to the track, and when I say that, I say that very tongue-in-cheek, only 97. It's perhaps the biggest grid of cars that we kind of cover in any endurance race across the world, but 97 entries is way down for obvious reasons, which we don't really need to go into. I'm trying to fathom which of the cars that we've actually lost, and as far as I can gather, it's only the number 8, the Get Speed Performance Mercedes.
Totally out of the race is only
yeah.
the black markers over number 8.
Yeah,
but there are several SP9 cars that are essentially out of the running as the 19 makes its move again. Interestingly, just cover off that change for position then. Van der Linde in the 42, passing Schramm in the number 5 car, and his brother at the moment is homing in very aggressively on Dries van Thor at the front.
And of course the number 4, which we've lost, which is falling down the order. Do we know if that car's been recovered at the pits?
We'll be able to see on this camera for Kelvin in the 29 as he heads through. See if it's still stranded out there. No, he's gone. That's still in the large carousel. Let me check on my driver tracker. I hadn't seen it come back in specifically, but I also haven't seen it parked out on the outside of Schwalbenschwanz. So it's not sitting on the driver tracker at Schwalbenschwanz. So one would assume that it has been back, but then certainly we've not seen it being worked on either.
No. And
it would, if it was retired from the race, it wouldn't be on the tracker, but then it would be on the timing screen as retired. So
yeah, it's showing as running, which doesn't necessarily mean it's running on the track. It just means it's still effectively in the race and potentially being recovered. I'm just trying to find a car in the order. It's the 91, which is a bit down the order, in 83rd spot. It's running in 3rd place in SP3T. It's the Gitti Tyre Motorsport. Gitti? Are we saying Gitti or GT?
Yeah.
Gitti, it's Italian, isn't it? The Gitti Tyre Motorsport for VW Golf. Now, David Drinkwater is in that car, and I've been in touch with David, sharing the car with Nicholas Cry, Wayne Stephen Moore, and Tommy Forchontra from France. David reports that his words for his first stint, that was nuts, but awesome at the same time. I think we can all understand that. So much oil down from the Lamborghini. It was like driving on ice with the greasy conditions, then a load of oil just to make it a bit interesting. I think we speculated on that, didn't we? Quite a few cars doing a bit of rallycross, circling of the yellows. We've just had an issue with the fueling. Now, this was a couple of pit stops ago and only put 42 laps in. That's what he says. I'm not sure if the Volkswagen Golf will actually do 42 laps on a tank. Sorry, 42 litres.
42 litres.
That makes sense, doesn't it, in the message? So they were going to have to stop in a couple of laps. So the 91, because of that issue in that pit stop. Thanks for that, David. It's great to get that info direct from the pit lane and from the 91 pit. But that's what's put that car out of running down the order. However, still in a podium position in that class.
Nice. Always good to hear from the competitors in all of the various different classes. Following the leader then. And interestingly, no discussion of the little bump Maximilian Gotz had with a back marker in the middle of the northern loop in terms of any kind of penalty. It's not even been discussed as being under investigation so far as we've seen on the on Race Control News channel. So at the moment he appears to have got away with that. Those of you asking on Twitter, is the Manta running? The Manta is not entered in the race, unfortunately.
2020 just keeps on going downhill. That was very sad. It's always been well, a kind of a feature of this event, seeing the Manta Foxtail.
Can-Am John's been in touch, talking about knifing the tyres. Very interesting, something I've not come across before at all. And you slice the middle of the tread block. Apparently that's what Fred, my Michelin engineer, was doing to that set of wets. You slice the middle of the tread block to make them move and heat up, which makes perfect sense. If you're struggling a lot with tyre temperature, it's the movement of the rubber which generates the tyre temperature, and that's a big part of running a wet, actually, not just the water clearance, but also the way they heat up in wet conditions. And so it makes the tyres heat up. Indication there that the track temp and the difficulty in getting the temperature in the tyres is definitely there for all the competitors.
Yoda's uncle is informing me that the number 4 is actually in the dead car park.
Yes.
The dead car park, I should say.
Okay,
which
so
is
out of the race then.
Yeah, it's out of the race, and that's official. It's in the order. It's dropping down the field, obviously. And another bit of information from Jean Chavet. Gitti is from Singapore. I always thought it was an Italian make. So thanks for that, Jean. More pit stops, this time for one of the Audis. into the pits for tyres. No hurry there going on to putting that set of tyres on. It is the number 3 car that's in 4th place.
Haas on board, and this is the big fight then. So Van der Linde was 32 seconds back from Van Thor at the front, who stayed out 1 extra lap. And then Haas was about 11 seconds back from him. Yellowly still also in the box, but he was out of it about a minute back. But it's Haas and Van der Linde that were fighting relatively hard over that final podium position, trying to take that away from each other. And here then is the number 10 car, which is running a little further back, 25th position, that family effort you were talking about. Schaffner on board, but shortly to be replaced, it appears. Fuel going in to that Pro-Am Get Speed car. So, as we've seen all the way through the race, Gotts and Van Thor in that group that are running just a little bit longer could pay dividends at the end of the race. Then you've got Van der Linde, Haas, Yellowly, the other Kelvin Van der Linde in the Audi, and Schramm all pitting together. You've got Sheldon Van der Linde not in the Audi, in the BMW number 42, pitting as well further back down the order. So
at this stage, Alex, where you see the lead kind of flip-flop, because we'll soon see the cars that are running in 1st, 2nd and 3rd, they're going to be due a pit stop very soon. As a driver and a team in that position, where is your head? Where are you thinking about? I mean, we're nowhere near back timing yet, are we, towards the finish? There's so much could happen. 17 hours and 44 minutes to go. We're nowhere near thinking about that, are we?
Well, in this condition, you're almost certainly assuming that a change of circuit condition at some point will equalize everyone on stop. So there will be a certain point where everybody has to take an alternate tire at the same time. So I would be imagining on the pit wall that all of these teams are assuming that any fuel deficit will be cancelled by tire condition. What won't be cancelled is how long the previous stint was, and therefore how long you have to pit for, which will give each of the cars track position on account of the NLS system that we know and don't love, with regards to how complicated that is. So yeah, a lot of this will be a case of how long the previous stint was before these guys all eventually need slicks or inters or whatever they need differently from the wet tires they're currently on, and then that'll play the track position out through the next phase of this race. At the moment, it's pretty tight at the front. And all of the drivers, although they are racing relatively closely, 30 seconds back, 11 seconds back, etc., can't see each other. So they're just, as a driver in this position, you're just grinding out laps and trying to ignore it if anybody's catching you, and trying to grab hold of it if you're catching anyone else. This is the slow zone we've got at the moment in the Hudson back. That looks like a set of Mustang tail lights to me.
Hard to judge. You're a better man than me for having a bash at that one, but he did go straight on into the Hudson back. First part of the Hudson back, swinging into the left-hander just before it goes right, left, right again, and the car just seemingly straight lining and frontal contact with the barrier. We'll try and get an identification on exactly what car that was. But it is pitch black out there, and all we had was tail lights to identify the car from. A good spot by Alex.
Looked like Mustang tail lights.
Yeah.
Looked like, but then it came round. And it had a very Porsche front end. So either it's two cars welded together, or I've got one end wrong.
The Fricadelli car is in the pits. The Fricadelli Porsche, and that car into the pits with cars around it. Car in 9th place, Phoenix Racing Audi in and already leaving the pit lane. That's car 5 in 9th. We've got the number 31 Fricadelli Porsche in, and then just behind them on the road, the number 98. That's the Rover Racing BMW M6. And Whitman has brought the car in the 98, and that car running 35 seconds behind the number 31 Fricadelli car. So that's a pretty good race at this point in the race. Lars Kern at the wheel. Not sure if he's going to be turning that car over to one of his teammates.
So tight in the traffic for Christopher Haas, chasing down Van der Linde in the 29, clearing his way through one of the GT4 Aston Martins now. Gets a gap on the inside, oof, drifting slightly wide, and then just doing this hour after hour on end. One of those textbook slides we've seen all the way through in wet conditions from the Audi. Touch of oversteer on the power. And just the next driver's getting ready in the Gex Speed camp. Ready to rock and roll in the leading car.
Josh Barrett tweets, Alex, he admires your optimism that there might be a stage in this race where slicks can be used and bring everything back into order. I've got to say that the weather forecast that we've seen, there is a reduced chance of rain towards tomorrow lunchtime, towards the end of this race. However, on saying that, that forecast has changed several times in the last 6 hours. So, yes, who knows? It's basically feeling as you go.
The circuit situated in a massive band of forest. It's the same band of forest that runs across all the way to Spa, so I'm told. So the legend goes, and I've spent some time there, and it just gives this massively unpredictable weather system, a bit in a very similar way to, of course, legendarily happens at Spa-Francorchamps. So it's so hard that the weather pops up. It's not a case of you can watch on the radar a big weather front coming in and take a view. It pops up and then goes away, because the trees and the various rolling landscape around the ring are changing and affecting the way the weather plays out. I will be in pure disbelief if we run now on wets till the absolute end of the race, you know, all 17 hours of it, but could happen, couldn't it? And
Germany and well, the Eifel Rennen in September, there was always a good chance, and I mean, we've had, I think we mentioned earlier, we've had hail when the race has been run in May.
So there's Marciello getting ready to get back in the 9. Would have thought we'll see Maximilian Gotz breaking to the pits this time. And that set of wets now waiting for him down in the pit lane. In comes the leader, and this will settle him back into the pack. Although the two cars behind him, both Van Thor and in fact, almost everyone behind him in immediate contact down to Engel, owe him a pit stop as well. So he'll still retain the virtual lead of the event with a little bit of fuel margin too, having been out front. Fuel hose goes in, car goes up, and they'll spin it around as they're putting the tyres on. And Raffaele Marciello is going to be installed. Nice relaxed pit stop as a driver here in Nürburgring, because it takes a bit. Obviously, you've got the limitation on pure time, and also takes a bit of time to get the fuel in the car. Had to park a long way out from the rig there, haven't they?
Yes, luckily, yeah, they are. The rig is at full stretch to get that. Marcello was the starting driver, let's not forget, in the number 9. And a fabulous first couple of stints. Into the pits has come the number 1 Audi from second place. Dries van Tor bringing that car to a halt, right on his marks. And car going up on the jack, swiveling round at 45 degrees, purely to assist in the exit from the pit apron. Car pointing in the right direction.
Electric guns, of course. No pneumatic supply.
Of course, yes. I was wondering, Alex, if you got a chance to have a look at the tyre wear on that car, but the pit crew were a bit too quick, weren't they?
Yeah, very much so. Obviously, the GT3 here, one of the only classes that are allowed to use the central wheel nut. As soon as you go back into GT4, you're on 4 lug nuts, NASCAR style, or more. And let's have a look at them, if those are the tyres that indeed have just come off. I would have thought the wets will be in reasonably good condition. A bit of gluing up of the sills to make sure that they don't wear anymore. Can often be a very big issue if they start to delaminate. that, gluing up the outside sill. You don't need too much water flowing in, or you don't need any kind of delamination of the outside of the floor of that Audi. Just the sort of thing that can happen over the exit of ice curve or throughout the Rickenham section.
I would imagine as well at 165, 170 miles an hour, which is the top end speed down the Dottinger Hole, that could end up being quite a problem if they're getting in there and just ripping the rest of the floor tree off.
Yeah, that's absolutely what they're trying to prevent, the cleaning up of the air around those sills. Nothing on these race cars is here by mistake. It's all there for a reason. It has a structural rigidity and structural strength that needs to be respected. The leading car sitting there waiting for their pit stop time to pass. Full stint that time for Max Gotts. There sits the #1 Audi. You get this bizarre situation here in the race as he actually heads back out on circuit. And you get this bizarre situation because the pit stops are so long, where those leading teams, even if you're 25, 30, 45 a minute back from the car ahead, you actually end up sitting there just across from him in the pits, staring at him if you're in sequence. And it is Raffaello Marcello who is in the #9. And I didn't see actually if Dries van Thor has been replaced. A little bit of murk on the window there, so we'll have to wait until the timing screen resets itself to see if anybody has taken over the #1 Audi.
Let's have a look at the rest of our classes, shall we? It's been a little while since we checked in. SPX, believe the Glickenhaus is the only car running in the SPX class. Fernandez Laser currently at the wheel of the Glickenhaus. That's currently in 18th place overall. We've got SP9s running as expected at the front of the field from first down to 24th, 26th actually. A bit of an interloper in the 25th spot. That's the Volkenhurst Motorsport BMW M4 GT4 in the SPT class, currently class leader. Great drive from Guerrieri in the Honda Civic, brings him to the front of the TCR class, and currently 27th overall, 33 laps completed in comparison to 37 laps just completed by the leading SP9 car. So great run that from a TCR runner and leading the class. SP10 just behind the 170, the TCR class leader. SP10 class leader is the BMW M4 GT4 of Hofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport. That car currently 28th overall. Then just behind them, about 10 seconds behind them, is the SP7 class leader, currently 29th overall. A further 48 seconds behind the SP7. Sorry, no, that's 37 seconds behind the SP7 class leader is the Cup 3 leader. That's the Black Falcon Team Techstar Porsche Cayman, right behind. And just looking at the lap times there, not really going to gain on the W&S Motorsport Porsche Cayman ahead of them in the SP7 class. That's not relevant though, because they're both in separate classes, SP7 and Cup 3, 29th and 30th. The first of the Cup X runners, they're in 32nd place overall, and that's the Teichmann Racing KTM Crossbow, car 111. First in the KI Cup 5 category, Team Aviasol Rennsport BMW M240i. I do love the look of those 240i's. And that's a BMW, and I'm not really a BMW man, I'm a Merc driver, so that's big coming from me. They're 35th overall in that class, and then gonna have to scroll down to 44th place overall for the SP Pro class leader, Black Falcon Team Identica. That's a Porsche 911 GT3 Cup, and they have completed 31 laps to be at the head of that class. V3T, 46th spot overall. That's the Team Matol Racing Porsche 718 Cayman S. And further down the order, in 49th spot overall. It's the Pixin CFN Team Adrenaline BMW 330i, and when I say they were 51st overall in the field. SP8 is in 52nd, the SP8 class leader I should say, is in 52nd spot overall. It's the Nova Racing with Toyo tyres Lexus, and 52nd overall for the SP8 class leader. SP3T class leader, 55th place overall. It's the Slim Motorsport Hyundai i30 Fastback. And then we've got 3 more class leaders running together on the road, all completed 30 laps and on their 31st lap. So first in 57th spot, SP4T leader is the Porsche Cayman. Hasn't got a team name. Coppen is the driver of that car in 57th place. Right behind them on the road is the 58th spot, is the V6 class leader, and that's the Pixin CFN Team Adrenaline Porsche Cayman. And then again, a further 1 minute and 56 behind them on the road in 60th spot is the, 59th spot is the Ford Motors Bio Concept car. That's the Porsche 911 running the bioethanol.
Oh, Marcello is spinning the leading car.
Oh,
that looks like it's in the Forest Chicane. And let's see if he gets that one going. Sorry to interrupt your run through the field. Important to check in on all the other classes, of course.
That's pretty important, isn't it?
But Marcello's going to have to find reverse in the number 9 Mercedes here. And this is a replay, so we'll be able to check out the sectors. This happened just a few moments ago. And has he damaged it? Looks like he might have damaged it, Bradders.
I'll be amazed if he hasn't gotten any damage on that. He's pulling up, isn't he? He's on driver's left. Where did we identify that as, Alex?
It looked like the Forest Chicane to me, the first left-hander of the Forest Chicane. And where is that? That looks like a little further down the road. Let's have a look if we can see him on the driver tracker. And where has he managed to make it to? The number guy, he's just on the exit at Callanhard, parked up on the exit at Callanhard, and on his way down to Versiphon. Car is still on. You can hear all the pumps running, but no movement. And you've got to wonder if he's had some sort of failure there, Marcello. He didn't appear to hit anything, did he? In the Forest Chicane. So he's had a spin in the Forest Chicane and then bimbled down all the way to the exit of Callanhard. Well, goodness me. Let's have a look at it again then. Here's Marcello. He's going in, and that's the base of the foxhole. And he's headed over the apex curb into the Forest Chicane. There's the first right of the Forest Chicane. And it's here where he's just going to lose the rear end. I wonder if he's had a rear suspension failure or something similar. The rear did appear to sink and not deliver grip as he went into the left-hander there.
You know how Adam Christodoulou described the number 4 going off as net code because it was a very bizarre accident.
You can see yes, there. It's at a strange angle.
He's lost a wheel. Yeah,
could well have lost a wheel or had some sort of, because there's no reason why it would be stopping just for that spin. So it must be, and it looked to me as he turned into the left-hander that the rear right of that Mercedes did not deliver grip, and the fact he's got no drive indicates that the rear wheel may be out of the drive pack. Of course, if you've not got 2 rear wheels on the car, a limited slip diff will just literally allow the right-hand wheel to freely spin. No strap mode like you have in Formula 1 to lock those wheels together and make it get back to the pits, I don't think. And I suspect he cannot get that back to the pits. And he's getting out. He's getting out.
If he stays with the car and gets recovered back to the pits, are the team allowed to repair the car.
Certainly there will be.
It's not classed as outside assistance.
No, if they can drag it back to the pits, they'll be able to repair it. But
Right.
it's a case of being.
But is the rule where the driver has to stay with the car?
Certainly the driver.
Like
the driver can't leave the car. Le Mans rules, etc.
10 meters away,
you
you're out.
can't disappear, and you can't receive outside assistance. For example, somebody giving you a spanner that wasn't in the car, etc.
Or a spare battery, like what happened last weekend.
Certainly, but the car can be dragged back, and look at the devastation on Marciello's face. Well, we can't see his face because it's absolutely buried in his hands, sitting in the number 9 Mercedes. Normally, that kind of thing would happen at a big, high-load area of the circuit. It just seemed to fail for him. Get Speed Performance watching on.
You know what, Alex? We've had the number 4 Mercedes go out whilst leading this race in a bizarre off. We've now got the current leader, the number 9 Mercedes team, Get Speed, off at the side of the track, and very much, I mean, even if he recovers the car, it's out of contention, isn't it?
I feel for him.
And you can see Rafael Marciello's body language is just showing how desperate that situation is. He remains seated in the car, hands to his face inside of his helmet as the recovery teams arrive. The course vehicle is already on site and will be messaging the information required with regards to recovering that vehicle. And it's just, that is just such a sad sight to see.
It's just a driver. He's pulled his radio cable out because he knows that there is nothing he can do about that. If the rear wheel is not connected, look at it. Look, the rear just gives up completely. He's not out of control there. The rear right just gives up completely. And so he's managed to bimble it along with the wheel still somewhat connected, I suspect. Giving him forward drive, then eventually it's just given up. Of course, it's a hill on the exit of Callanhard there. You're going uphill, so it will then eventually just give out and not provide the driver with any forward drive. He's staying in the car, of course, because someone will have to steer it all the way around the circuit. And they're gutted at Get Speed.
As a driver, he will have felt the car break away. He may have even felt something break in the rear, and that's the only information you can really pass on, isn't it? That, I felt something break in the rear, the car has gone off, I wasn't able to control it. That car being recovered now, the number 9 we can see is being recovered, but as he goes into, well, like you said, Alex, not a very high load, use the curb on the left.
You could perhaps argue that the foxhole is a relatively big compression for the rear suspension.
Is that a big compression area?
And it's something started in the foxhole, and then eventually that's really the first time he's put load on it again after the base of the foxhole. And for whatever reason, that has been the place where the rear has given up on Marciello. He'll be able to steer it back to the pits and stay in the car. They have a long night ahead of them. Anything can happen here, though. Inclement weather conditions, difficult circuit, and a lot of mistakes out there being made already. He's absolutely gutted, but they need to stay in it, keep pounding round. We've seen this race to and fro so many times.
Michael Hetherington, hello Michael, from the northeast. Michael says, I'd be interested to see the heart rate of the drivers. You can give us a bit of an insight into that, Alex.
Lower.
At a place like this, all right, you're fresh from Le Mans. In comparison to Le Mans, which is all about the straights, isn't it? This place, I would imagine your heart rate very rarely comes down, surely.
I've seen some interesting pieces of data about this, actually. Several drivers have worn heart rate monitors in the car. And what's interesting is it doesn't trend very much with physical exertion. It trends almost definitely with, what do you want to call it? Alertness, anxiety, pressure.
Like a burst of adrenaline.
Exactly, and absolutely, it's often the case. It's often the case that I'm just watching him lose out again down into Callanhard. Looked to go long on the brakes there, didn't he, actually, in Callanhard? But yeah, but it trends a lot with the amount of pressure that the drivers are under as opposed to the sheer exertion. The physical exertion of driving these cars around here in the wet is not huge. You're not pulling massive G. What is
So it's not like you're going to the gym and throwing weights around to get your heart rate up. It's a reverse of that, if anything.
It just, your mind obviously uses a massive amount of calories.
Yes.
Just purely because you're concentrated, you're focused the entire time. And often in conditions like this, when you see drivers single stinting or jumping out after two, that's what they're being changed for. They're being changed for their focus. They're being changed for their ability to, you know, string the car between the traffic lap after lap after lap without making any mistakes.
Right.
Because it does wear on you, and you do start to make silly, tired errors if you're in the car for too long. But you're not lifting weights in there.
But yeah, but I would imagine if your heart rate, I mean, you know, you can cycle very slowly and get your heart rate to run at 120 for 30 minutes, and you haggard at the end of that 30 minutes. That's the kind of reverse exertion that I mean. If you're running at what's your average heart rate when you're running? Have you ever measured yourself?
140, 150.
Right,
like
and
that.
in the car, you're matching that.
Yeah, you'd sit in that kind of zone.
Yeah, but you're not running
Certainly
to
not.
create that.
It's the pure
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah.
I mean, with prototype racing, there is great muscular engagement. You're really holding yourself firm in the car. There's big force on the
because
driver.
of the G-force.
Because of the G-force you're fighting against, and even though you've got power steering, the steering needs still to be pretty firm because you have to have feel. So you will still, if you're underprepared for an event, feel the shoulder, feel the neck, and the neck will go. And at the end of a test day, you will still just feel the invisible hand of G-force slam you against the side of the cockpit.
What about your legs? What about your feet on the pedals?
It's
the
a huge
G-force
deal.
moving your feet off the pedals, I would imagine.
It's a huge deal, and you have to be very strong from the pelvis and the thigh downwards to hold the legs in a modern prototype car. We have those tunnels, the F1 style tunnels, which help a lot with positioning your legs.
Yeah.
But obviously a function of sharing the car with various different drivers is that some guys will need more space than others. Everybody has to be able to make it over to the clutch in a hurry if they have to. So you'll not have quite the support you want, inevitably. And yes, it's an area of your body you really need to be very strong, sort of from the thigh through to the midriff, and that grounds your whole effort inside the car to keep you firm and stable, because now however tight you do your belts up, you flop about like a rag doll as soon as you get out of there.
And what about a GT3 car, which is, all right, the confines of the racing seat kind of trap your top of your thighs, but then from the knee down, your feet are on the pedals in that kind of open footwell.
Several things can break you in a GT car. The main one is temperature. And the other one is brake pressure. Brake pressure is huge with ABS systems. Depending on which model you're in, some of them need huge brake pressure. It depends on the ratio of the master cylinders.
Is that because you're pressing the brake as hard as you can?
Because obviously you can press the brakes extremely hard and not lock up.
Right.
So actually, there was a tendency a little while back now for the road master cylinders to be used in a GT3 car, which meant that to achieve the brake pressure, you had to really lay into the brake pedal several times a lap, and that was incredibly difficult. I'm just wondering if we were seeing a little bit of contact there. I don't think that was the Marcello car getting contact. It'd be good to have a look at that again as he gets tugged back to the pits. We've got the Glickenhaus in pit road as well, the 704 car, the sole runner in SPX. For those interested, that's sitting in 18th spot at the moment. Top non-SP9 car. Top car that's neither in XPX or SP9 is the SP8T BMW with Dan Harper at the wheel, currently sitting in 26th place with the top SP10, the number 70 for company in 27th.
So Darren Wood is asking the question. Hello, Darren. I know you're a big fan of the N24.
He's parked it.
Has he parked it? He's been recovered though, isn't he? We're talking about Marcello here. Darren's question is, how long has the car been out of the pits? And from the data I've got in front of me, the car had been out of the pits for 8 laps. or was that his outlap into his third stint. So I've got the data here that says
that 9 lap stints are possible, so it was towards the end.
Towards the end, as far as the data is concerned.
They'd obviously boxed him after 5 before that, but that will have been a tyre call.
I've got more data coming in. It was his outlap.
That was his outlap.
Yeah. I've got that confirmed. It was his outlap, and so that wasn't a suspension failure, Alex. That was a loose wheel.
That was a loose wheel.
That was a not adequately put on wheel. So thanks for asking that.
It made it all the way round, all the way through the floodplats, down the foxhole, and up to the forest chicane. Goodness me, he's been through the 6th gear Schwedenkreuz on a
wheel breaking loose.
It just tells. So what's obviously happened there is in the base of the foxhole, it's just given up eventually and come loose.
It's when the car is slowed down that's enabled the wheel to come off.
You could see it at an angle as it sat there on the curve, couldn't you?
Yes.
It's me. Let's have a look at that start again.
It's been an eventful Nürburgring 24 hours that we all expected it to be. The Nürburgring will always throw up anomalies and vagaries, and the challenge of this place in itself is something, but when you add in some horrendous bad weather and some very heavy rain with standing water, hard enough to drive the Grand Prix track, the Grand Prix track, and then get out onto the Nordschleife, but we did, and we've been racing for a considerable amount of time still. And there's a considerable amount of time left for anything to happen. We've lost 2 cars already from the lead position of this race. The number 4 Mercedes went out after contact with the barrier, and we are just off the back of watching the right-hand rear wheel leave the number 9 Mercedes, also in the lead position.
Just looking at another piece of footage off screen, we have seen it when Marciello hit the wall a second time trying to get back with that loose wheel incredibly hard on the outside of Callanhard. So there'll be further damage to the front of that Mercedes, unfortunately, when he gets it back to the pits. It's absolutely massive impact, as we see the similarly sized impact for the number 100 BMW SP9 car that was out of the race earlier on. That pulled back.
And a very angry Jörg Buller, that number 100 BMW, pulled back behind the barrier, and then kind of no effort was seen to be being made. The car is still way down the order. I think they eventually did get that number 100 back to the pits. Then we had the leading Lamborghini, or one of the certainly the main contenders, the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini, having a, I think, have we had that confirmed as a gearbox oil leak?
No, so that car was ditching fluid. That car was ditching oil. I'm not sure if it was gearbox oil or certainly
diff oil.
Yeah, certainly the other Mercedes, which was out earlier on, back to Year's Mercedes, was out with a gearbox issue. The other Get-Speed car, but that was ditching fluid, the Conrad car, and didn't make it back round. And just after, well, they had a spell in the lead, didn't they? The number 9 car looked all to be going oh so well for that squad. Just after Raffaele Marciello took over the car, that disaster absolutely struck with that loose right-hand wheel. Let's see if we can see it as it heads out of pit lane. All looks to be well on the way around. Number 4 Mercedes of Manuel Maxka also having a bit of a spin and an error, putting that car in the wall out of the small carousel, which was a slow zone for a considerable period of the race then, and led to a bit of a shake-up in the order.
So we're hoping to see the Marciello car, which had just been taken out. Maxi Götz had completed his second stint, first stint of 5 laps, then a stint of 8 laps. Götz brought into the pits, and Marciello taking the car out, and it was on the out lap, albeit quite a way around the Nordschleife when he lost that wheel. And the car being recovered now. That has left the leading runners looking like this. The number 1 Audi, Dries van Toor, now at the wheel of the number 1 leads. He's got only 19 seconds to the second place car. That's also an Audi. Both Audi Sport Team cars. In fact, we've got an Audi Sport Team 1, 2, 3. So Haase in the number 3 and Van der Linde in the number 29 is in third. 19 seconds between first and second, and then about 2 seconds by my estimation between second and third. Back in fourth, Alexander Sims is now at the wheel of the Rover Racing BMW. That car, number 99, coming up into fourth spot. A great run from that car, just hanging onto the shirt tails of the leading cars ahead of it, and then just waiting for the race to evolve and things coming to it. As far as I can see, it may be a lap down, but that needs to be, I need that lap to just click by. Behind them in fifth, Earl Bamber, now at the wheel of the KCMG Porsche 911 car 18. In sixth, that's the number 42, Tomczyk, is at the BMW Team Schnitzer car in sixth spot, car 42. In seventh is the number 5 of Phoenix Racing, that's an Audi R8. In eighth place is the number 6, Maro Engel in the Mercedes, running 46 seconds behind that seventh spot, and then almost equidistant, another 46 seconds before we get the number 19 KCMG Porsche coming through in ninth and rounding off the top 10. These cars all, by the way, in the SP9 class as we expected. It's the Fricandelli Racing Team Porsche 911, a further 47 seconds, almost equidistant again. Equidistant between 8th, 9th and 10th, that is. So things beginning to develop. We expect things to continually develop. And it's just...
So it looks like that front end, which had contact with the barrier the second time, has eventually given up then on the toe round for Raffaele Marcello.
Ah, that's what we're seeing.
I mean, we saw him spin once. We've certainly given him... It did look like it's absolutely confirmed that the rear tyre was not from the team, that the rear tyre was not connected to the car. Not
at all, Alex. It's just I'm putting 2 and 2 together and getting 6. So
sure.
But hopefully I'll get 4. It's just I'm surmising that with it being an outlap and that wheel was definitely not on the car, and I think the most likely thing is rather than a Mercedes rear suspension breaking, there's more likelihood of a wheel not coming loose, isn't there?
Certainly is.
Or wrongly put on or something, or cross-threaded or something.
Certainly is, yeah. And you do see them come off slowly like that. That wouldn't be unusual if it just didn't make quite thread, and then it had just been unwinding, and eventually the drive pegs are just not engaging. What's confusing me is as Dries van Thor's off as well in the number 1 Audi as we watch them on board and Dries van Thor off in the rain, and it's raining hard out there, isn't it? It's raining absolutely hard. And Van Thor, look at Van Thor struggling with that Audi. And there's there's a race on now at the front with that Mercedes fallen by the wayside. Van Thor leading the race, of course, not quite idented that as he heads towards Metzgersfeld. Let's watch it again. Look how hard it's raining. And this is again in the Forest chicane. And is he going to have exactly the same? He is, you know. He's going to have exactly the same incident. Well, it gave Raffaele Marcello the benefit of the doubt. You wonder if there's something down there, and actually that tyre is effect rather than cause. I'm sure the team will give us the heads up on that, but Van Thor manages to get away with it, carries on his way. 18 seconds at the moment in front of Haase, and the first of the Van der Lindes in the 29 car. But this is going to be a massive battle now in these 3 Audis, and you've got to wonder how much Audi are going to have to say about this.
I think it's going to reward the brave here, Alex. We're seeing a lot of spray from pretty much the whole field. A lot of standing water showing up as well, with big huge puddles of water. I just noticed where on the track where we were overtaking one of the lower classes, and I literally couldn't see the sidewall of the front tyres because of the amount of water that's on the track.
They're filling the tread block with really standing water. You can see it. You can see it everywhere now. At the front of this race, though, Audi Sport Team Phoenix, Audi Sport Team Car Collection, Audi Sport Team Land, So 3 Audis, but 3 ambitious customer teams looking to make their mark on this race. How much control will Audi have over keeping these teams sensible while they lead this race 1, 2, 3?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure, and I'd like to think, I know somebody who I can ask, whether I get
Go on,
an
ask
accurate,
Martin.
I'm gonna, yeah, Martin, it's coming. I'm sure we're gonna be, what was Lena Gates famous saying? Push without risk. You can't push at all in these conditions. It's all a battle of survival, isn't it?
Push without risk is equivalent to the disclaimer you get given, isn't it, at the start of a dangerous activity? Whatever happens, it's not our fault, essentially.
Yeah. We need you to push and put it on the limit, and if you go off, it's your fault. Yeah. We've got quite a diverse and eclectic mix of cars, as ever, in the Nürburgring 24 hours, but it's perhaps worth mentioning we've also got we're also meeting quite a diverse driver list as well, and I must mention a British driver, Charlie Christina Martin, is in the number 242. That's the Pixum CFN Team Adrenaline Motorsport. It's in the Class Cup 5 category. She's in the M240i, which is one of my favourite cars. I think that car looks fantastic. It looks like it's doing 100 miles an hour standing still, that car. Well, Charlie is the first trans driver that we've got in the field here this weekend. British driver, very familiar to UK motorsport fans. And Charlie is a transgender. She's used her status as a prominent racing driver to raise awareness of LGBT and transgender issues and rights. She was influenced by trans model Caroline Crossy, saying that Caroline was a real trailblazer in the trans community, and she remembers it was the eureka moment of this is what I need to do, and she was only 7. So best of luck to Charlie, who, I'm just looking down the order, currently 4th in class, 65th overall, and we've got all the British fans rooting for you. Charlie Martin there in the 245 BMW.
Yep, great to see Charlie out there. Hope she has a great race, and it's a very friendly character, and hopefully she has good fun out on the racetrack, gets a good result as well. Not best conditions for your first 24 hours of Nürburgring. It gets better, Charlie. It's not always like this, and we wish you all the best in that BMW. That's for sure. It's a battle at the front, certainly. Still shaping up between the number 1 and the number 3 as we just cut back to the action. Here's the number 1, Dries van Thor, leading the race, but Hassan behind him is not too far back as well. This is a battle for the overall lead of the Nürburgring 24 hours. And there it is then, Hassan watching Dries van Thor slide his way out of the small carousel. He wants to lead this one, and just look at the spray as they head out onto the Dottinger. This is motorsport on level hard with legend mode stuck on. Just absolutely incredible scenes here. Look at that. Where's the track? As they head to the Dottinger, a bit of traffic ahead. Christopher Haas pulls out of the slipstream of Dries van Thor just so he can see where he's going. I've done this, and that is about as much as you can see. If you don't believe that that's what the visibility's like, I've done it, and I can tell you it's that bad.
First race I ever did in the wet in a Formula Ford was like that, and I instinctively lifted the visor, and it was like someone had just threw in a bucket of water into my helmet, and I literally couldn't breathe. I almost drowned. And don't try this at home. Do not try.
Has he done him? He's just done. I think Christopher Haas has just done him on the brakes into the final sector.
How did he even see where the corner was?
I think he passed him. He didn't even notice. It could well be, unless Van Thor's escaped up into that group of traffic. We won't have to wait too long to find out, because they're about to come across the line. Here it is again then, and yeah, there's the move. No, I think it was maybe the Porsche ahead. So much spray, we can't even see which car. Van Thor has just lost out in that bit of traffic, and sorry, Haas has just lost out in that bit of traffic. Van Thor is in the next group up the road.
The visibility is bad for the drivers, and equally as bad for the commentators.
It's just
we just got white screens.
Which car is which?
White screens of spray, and you know what? I feel much safer here in our commentary booth, looking at white screens of spray than being out there with the car moving around, aquaplaning every 2 minutes. So what's the Grand Prix strategy going to be like? The Nordschleife we've seen is dark. It's how is the FIA Grid 1 circuit part of this track going to be reacting to the amount of water that we see dropping?
Well, you get a bit of rubber, you get a lot more rubber down on the Grand Prix circuit, but certainly it's a bit wider, there's a bit more lighting, and you get a bit of a chance to take a breath. Certainly the real challenges of this kind of condition are areas like the floodplats, the base of the foxhole, where the car will almost certainly be aquaplaning and sliding around, as we see Christopher Haas just running a little bit wide through the back chicane of the Grand Prix section. And then areas like Wipperman and Brunchen and all the way down through the Kesselchen section into Mutkirch are just going to be almost impassable with this amount of water down. Just the bravery and skill to keep the car on the road as you chase after your teammate, absolutely immense here. You have to dance with the outside white lines of the circuit, find the grip where the rubber isn't. Look at them right around the outside of the first part of the Hatzenbach as they head through this winding section, the visibility ever worsening.
As we continue into the night, though, Alex, I can see the weather not improving, certainly until the sun comes up. And Christopher Haas is off, spinning wildly as he went through a right-hander. The car just snapping away from him. Alex mentioned only a few moments ago about the tread blocks on the tyres just getting absolutely saturated and overwhelmed by the amount of water on the track. And for me, that looked exactly like that. He was hardly moving. The car just snapped away, cornering, too much water on the track, and he basically just lost that, Alex.
The final part of the Hatzenbach, and they're just struggling so much for grip. There's so much water out there. Let's see it again. It's just through this section where the road cambers away. Look, he catches that curve.
Gets on the curve, doesn't
and
he?
as he comes off the curve, there's just absolutely no purchase from the rear axle of the car whatsoever. Does well to keep it out of the Armco. Christopher Haas will have some time to make up.
Yes, hopefully he kept it out the barriers. He didn't look quite like he did. We're coming up to the top of the hour. It's we're just underneath 17 hours to go now. So with just under 17 hours to go, we've got action aplenty here at the Nürburgring 24 hours. You're listening to RS1, a channel of the RSL network. And I'm quite sure that the drama is certainly going to continue for the next 17 hours, as I thank Alex Brundle for his company in the last hour. We've had all sorts of action. I'm going to be joined by Peter Snowden any moment now, and Snowy will be hitting the ground running with the incident aplenty on the track. We're going to keep an eye on the number 3. We saw him pirouette several times. He did about a couple of 360s. Hard to see whether or not he contacted the barrier in any way. I'm not sure he did, but he got the car through the right-hander onto the, I'm sure that was just as before you go right at the floodplats. It's very hard to see in these conditions, let alone drive racing cars around this track. And welcome back, Snowy. You were watching that, mate, and I'm not sure whether the Christopher Haas Audi did indeed contact the barriers.
No, didn't hit anything. Managed a full 360 pirouette and probably a little bit more, actually, probably even 720.
Yeah.
Didn't hit anything. I'm not quite sure. I thought it was Hatzenbach a bit further back, but as Alex Brundle, the departing Alex Brundle departing from the commentary booth, just said he picked up that curb on the end. It wasn't a question of just catching the curb. He generally hooked up the curb deliberately, but as Alex spotted very keenly and very astutely, it's when it came off the curb that was the problem. It unsettled the car. Using the curb, it's not really a problem. We've said this before, only yesterday Johnny and Paul and I were going through this, that in the wet, you don't want to use the curbs on the loaded wheels. I paint, curbs, wet, doesn't work. Yeah, sounds obvious. It wasn't, it was unloaded, and using the curb was no problem at all. It was coming off it just spat the back of the car around, and that was it. But on one of the narrowest parts of the circuit, Joe, 2 360s in the wet. It's missed everything.
Yeah, no.
It was like a video game at high speed. And I was waiting for the bit. I was waiting for the impact, the bits to come off it, debris, the carbon flying up, and it didn't. He got away with it. And you know that when it came to a halt, there was a metaphorical phew from inside that car. Possibly slightly different, but something of that order.
Alex and I were speculating as to what sort of team orders, if any, were going to come into the Audi Sport team 1, 2, 3 as it stands at the moment, albeit with 17 hours to go. I put that question to Martin Pass over the air, and Martin, thank you for getting back to us. Audi Sport entries, even though we're different teams, you can rest assured Chris Renke, Head of Customer Racing, watching in on our mission control above the big garages, will be in conversation with Phoenix, Car Collection and Land. I'm pretty sure they will, Martin. And I'm pretty sure that things will be what we would call quite conservative. Now, we're showing a red flag. Red flag is being put out on the start-finish straight, and that is probably down to conditions on the track becoming too much, too dangerous, quite frankly. So not the first time we've had a Nürburgring 24 hours brought to a halt with a red flag. We've had it for various reasons over the more recent years. We had a red flag for sleet and ice onto the track back in 2016, and a little bit earlier than that we had the race stopped for quite a chunk of time overnight because of thick heavy fog. And Darren Wood, you were spot on, mate. This is going to go to a red flag if this rain continues, is what he said a few minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, and he's been to a few Nürburgring 24-hour races himself to know what he's talking about, and he got that spot on. So snowy. Would you agree with that? You still drive a bit. You've raced at a pretty high level. I'm sure there's no envy there when you see these conditions and how these guys and girls are going. Personally, from where I'm sitting, I think that's the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the cars are different. The level of the pace of the cars these days, it's not the same as when I was doing it back in the days when it was sepia footage. Back news
in black and white. Yes.
But yeah,
and commentators
not as far as black and white. We haven't got as far as that.
And commentators felt like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But it was it's the right thing to do, even with the technological advances in lighting we've talked about already, how incredible they are. But it's the standing water. That's the big issue.
Well, we've just saw Christopher Hasser, who is an outstandingly talented driver, who harmlessly put his car where he'd been putting his car lap after lap after lap, using the curb on the right, and then the car just snapped away. And that, for me, is when the conditions are becoming inconsistent. The drivers are doing what they've been doing pretty much the whole race. We've had rain, but now the track conditions are that the inconsistency in the track conditions and standing water, and the amount of standing water is just too much for this race to continue in a safe fashion. So we've put the red flag out. We're going to hold it for a little bit. We're just going to gather our thoughts, and I'm pretty sure the weather's going to change. I'm not sure how long this rainstorm is forecast for, and we'll get onto our weather satellite. But as you heard Alex Brundle say, the Nordschleife area and the Eifel-Rennen, where it meets with the Ardennes, it's one big huge forest between Belgium, across the Belgium-German border, isn't it?
not for the first time in my life, I'm going to say something that I might regret. If John Hindhaught's listening, don't sack me, John, but every time I get in the commentary booth, the leading car goes out. Just a thought. 2 Mercedes now,
Well,
2
you need
stints.
yeah. I mean, we're in the entertainment business.
Strike that off. It didn't happen.
Sports commentary. That's why we love live sport, because we don't know what's going to happen next. And you know what? Coming into this, when I saw the weather forecast last week, and it was going to be a wet race, I just knew that the contention, the controversy, the incident rate was going to be sky high. And Steve Tarrant tweets, "This is a 24-hour race. This is 24-hour racing with steroids." Yes, you're right, Steve, it is. This is absolute Ironman motorsport, because every driver out there, and I'm not just talking about the SP9 class, I'm talking about the people down the field in all of our classes, no matter what car you are driving out there, it is the ultimate challenge in bravery and skill. Doesn't matter whether you're in an Opel Astra, a Golf GTI, or a GT3, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche. It is very, very courageous and brave to race these cars around the Nordschleife in these conditions.
It is, but there's the risk over reward. There's no point in when the risk is too great. There's no point when you're starting to have major things like that happening. Not just because it's a lead car. Doesn't matter. We say there's 23 classes of cars out there, and nearly 100 cars out there. So there's a whole variety. It's not just a car. We focus on the leading cars because it's so easy, because we're gullible, so we can follow the quick ones. We're watching. It's where all the action is. It's not where all the action is, where it's obvious, but there's action all the way down through the field, and it's those guys in the two. Is or the TCR or whatever, the Caymans, they're trying just as hard in their own particular category as we are. We just focus on the SP9 group, the GT3 cars, because they're at the sharp end. It's obvious, but it's just the same for all those other guys on those 240is. It's just an accident at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. It's still an accident at 100 miles an hour,
Especially here.
especially here. And it doesn't really matter if you're in an RS Audi or GT3 Mercedes or 240i or a Cayman or a Golf GTI for that matter.
Yeah.
And there are many other makes of vehicle available for this race, of course. Other brands are available, products, but no, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. Organisers, and we don't want that on the conscience as something.
It just spoils the race.
Exactly.
It spoils the race. We're losing, you know, we've already lost some of our main contenders, early leaders, like you said, and it just spoils the race. So for now, we'll take a pause.
Just
we'll keep your tweets coming, hashtag N24RSL. And Mike Nash asks, will the red flag period help Marciello, who is in the number 9 Mercedes, of course, who we saw lose a wheel? I'm receiving reports that car has been recovered back to Parc Fermé, which means that that's a retirement. So Marciello is going to be in the retirement list, I'm afraid.
Now, interestingly, Joe, just looking at my basic weather forecast, and I'm sure there are people that have got far better systems than I've got, but one I've relied on for a little while now. But the precipitation of this rain, 99%, is continuing through unabated until
99% precipitation.
Yes. Yeah, until 5 o'clock in the morning. The next slot between 5 and 8, it comes down to, it reduces to 97%, so eases off slightly. However, around about 8 o'clock until 11, it comes down to 70 and falls dramatically then. 11 till the next 3 hour slot until 11 till 2, which is virtually the end of the race. It is only 15% chance of rain.
Hang on a minute, it's only 20 to 11 in Germany at the moment. And we've got 99% chance of the rain at this rate going till 5 a.m.
Correct.
and then only reducing by a couple of percent.
Just on that, well, the first bit, and then
towards
suddenly
8
dropping dramatically. That's my point.
Right.
Dramatically dropping to just 15% chance by 3 hours from the end of the race.
I'm pretty
So
sure.
it's going to be a sprint, basically. Tomorrow lunchtime, there's going to be a sprint to the end.
Well, I'm just
Honestly,
thinking,
that
Snowy,
8:08 lap will happen.
I'm just thinking, Snowy, that I'm hoping that I'm pretty sure the race organisers will have a better weather forecasting satellite than Snowy's iPhone. But who knows? They may not. Those two, they may be going off the BBC weather app. It's not the BBC weather app.
Exactly.
It's not, is it?
You've just dished it being off Snowy's iPhone. I'll have you know, that is from Mr. Alan Hyde, who directly has the one that Mr. Alan Gow of Touring Cars, Toka, uses, and he apparently has gone through, I think it was 20 apps, he reckoned, before he'd got the one that he thought was appropriate to follow touring cars. And the man organises touring car, so it has a little bit more. The medium might be an iPhone.
Alan Gow can organise the weather to suit his touring car races.
Precisely. So it's his app. So
I've had Alan Gow saying...
You disaway, but...
I've had Alan Gow saying a driver's briefing, if this race gets boring, I am putting a pace car out. I've had that.
That's power, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's just control.
Well, it
Brilliant.
is his series.
Well, exactly. That's my ball, and I'll do what I want. Exactly. So, cars back into the pit lane now. Wow. I did say about 3 hours ago that we had not one, not two, not three, but 4 Audis in 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th place, yes?
Yes, we did.
And I did say, watch the march of the Audis. I didn't for a minute mean that I wanted or expected or anticipated, predicted, any term you want to use, that the 2 Mercedes at the front would have problems, go out, anything. Not at all. I just said, or we said, I think it was Johnny Palmer and I at the time, just watch those Audis. Watch the march of the Audis.
Yeah.
John Hindhaugh and I had exactly this on the last race here in this kind of series, as in the 6-hour race, NLS. I know this isn't part of that, but we know full well it's a setup for it. The Ferrari might have led, that octane Ferrari, the 126 Ferrari that Luke Ludwig put on pole and Kier started, it wasn't Hirsch started it, and got into the lead at the start of this race. We saw that then, that the Audis, it was the Audis that came through, and John spotted it, unsurprisingly, with his experience on the last race. They're coming through, they're coming through. Don't discount the Audis, don't discount the team sport. Never account, exactly the point. And they did, but it went down to the 6-hour race, went down to the last lap with the Ferrari starting the last lap in the lead, and then he had to back off, and we were talking sometimes 25, 30 seconds backing off per sector. On that last lap, he was having that much to fuel save it, and we realised, of course, what he's having to do was fuel save it. He had to give up the race win, but he had to save enough fuel to manage to stay on the podium. So they had to forgo and let the 2 Audis come through. Audi teams, what you say, never, never, ever discount them. Sure enough, not in the circumstances I would have expected or predicted. Or no, certainly not would have wanted for either of those Mercedes cars at the front, but they're both out now, and we've got 1, 2, 3 Audis out there in the pits, admittedly now, right at the top of the field. Audi teams, Audi Sport Team, Audi Sport Team, Audi Sport Team, Van Tor, Van der Linde and Haas.
And I mean, the first Mercedes in the field is now down in 8th, and that's Maro Engel in the number 6.
Well, not in that car though, was he? He was pole position man, but not in that car.
That's right. Ben Stevenson tweets in, thanks Ben, that's the most sensible call to have been made. It's been marginal for the last hour, and the last few close calls show how dangerous it could be, and glad everyone is okay. Corey Marvin tweets, this is unbelievable, the red flag shows and racing has come to a complete stop for safety reasons. I hope the rain stops and we get back to racing as soon as possible. I think we all concur with that. What are the regulations regarding the red flag and parc fermé from Nikolai B? And that is a good question. We're seeing cars in the pits now. They are receiving very limited attention from what I can gather.
I think that's a different. That's an answer to a different question there. The question was, what are the rules with parc fermé?
Yes.
As in, can cars come out of the parc fermé now and rejoin? No, I don't think so.
Oh, I didn't think that.
Okay, sorry, that was my interpretation.
No, my interpretation is red flag. Are we now in parc fermé?
No, because the race hasn't ended.
No, but under red flag, some series, when the red flag goes, the cars are corralled in parc fermé. That isn't the case here.
Yeah, but I think that's probably because of percentage of race distance covered, whereas here we're only a fraction into a 24-hour race. Let's face it, the rules for the 24-hour race are slightly different because of the length of the race. So I would suspect no, they're basically under pit rules now. They're just pitted, you can work on the car. What it does mean is, of course, you've got such a longer time in the pit, it's negated, it's neutralised for everybody. So anybody has got a problem, anybody's going like, this wasn't doing so well, or that was a problem, or this, they've got much longer time in the pits now to sort it out, because they're not in race, they're not on a race position where they've got to get the car back out quickly. They've got the same time as anybody else, but they're not under parc fermé. So it's that kind of halfway house.
Well, we're going to be able to do things like brake servicing. We're going to be able to change discs and pads, which is something that we would see perhaps with about 10 hours of racing, 11 hours of racing, and then potentially when the daylight breaks, we could see another change of discs and pads. So that's going to push that window further towards
totally
the
different
flag.
strategy, because now you suddenly have the potential to do a whole load more servicing, as you said, that you wouldn't do at this part of the race. You wouldn't consider you'd do it if you had to.
So it's been an eventful race, with the start occurring in very, very heavy rain conditions, which, to be honest, haven't really fared up to any great extent, and track conditions absolutely atrocious to start the race. It was a very slippery first lap for everyone. The Grand Prix Strecker is, of course, being described by Alex Brundle as being very, very slippery indeed in comparison to the Nordschleife. We had a relatively clean start to the race. Didn't really see any incidents starting to develop, and everyone was very sensible in the circumstances. However, not sometimes the words that you would put together, and it wasn't very long before we saw the number 9 Mercedes move into the lead ahead of the Ferrari, and then followed very quickly by the number 4 Mercedes, who joined in the party. And in fact, very early in that first lap was when we saw that. We've had incident aplenty though, and cars that were very much in contention for a very good result here at the Nürburgring, albeit over a very long distance. We seem to have lost. We've lost the number 4 Mercedes going off and making contact with the barrier. Before that, we lost the 100 Rover Racing BMW in strange circumstances, where the car spun off on a slippery surface, had superficial damage from first assessment, was then pulled out of harm's way behind the barrier, but then a delayed recovery of that car has put that car right out of contention and is indeed a possible retirement. Later on in the race, we then saw the number 9 only a few short minutes ago. Oil put down by the Lamborghini. I'm not sure whether the oil was from the Lamborghini, and there we see it was indeed from the Lamborghini.
It went off in its own oil, didn't it?
So the Lamborghini confirmed to have lost gearbox oil, much to the chagrin of Franz Conrad. They were going ever so well, and for all the Lamborghini fans out there, we lost one of the main contenders, the car returning on a flatbed. Never a good sight to see any race car returning to the pits on a flatbed, engine cover off the car so that the driver could see. The number 9 Mercedes of Fabian Schiller then continued in the lead, and the car was later taken over by Maxi Goetz, who then did a couple of stints. First of 5 laps, the second stint, a longer 8-lap stint for Maxi. He then handed the car to his teammate Rafael Marciello, who took the car out, and the car on its out lap lost a rear wheel, and that has put that car out with damage that occurred of having lost the wheel. The car spun off, hit the barrier, and subsequent damage from that caused the car to become a retirement as it was being recovered around the rest of the track.
Despite the red flag being a good few minutes ago, we still haven't got all the cars back into the pits.
No.
Quite a bit. Last of the cars are on the Dottinger now, and we'll be coming up to Tiergarten, and some of the only front-running car there being the number 2, Yama Berman Mercedes. The car that went out in qualifying had a big accident at the front end of that car. We believe it had to be rebuilt via a new chassis to take part in the race. Those cars just coming back now to the pit to say they're on the Dottinger now. We'll be with us very shortly, so we'll have our full complement of the race cars that are running out on track. Will be back in with us. We have.
I'll quickly come in with a few tweets, Snowy, while you gather that. Sam Pierce, he agrees. You could see the red flag coming, especially after the Haas spin. He's. I will now admit I'm happy to be in front of the TV with a glass of wine and not returning to a flooded tent on the travel destination campsite. Every driver out there currently an absolute legend. Yes, we concur with that, and I'm pretty sure if you were in one of our travel destination campsites, you'd be sleeping in a sponge-like thing. Marcel Duc confirms no parc fermé. You can change your engine if you want. Not a bad idea, really. Might have time to do that. Considering the weather forecast, might have time to do that. Wally ends. You're making it worse, Snowy. I'm not really. Blame Snowy's iPhone. Hashtag blame Snowy's iPhone. It's all your iPhone's fault, Snowy.
Thank you.
Yes, you've really depressed everybody. If this rain's going to continue till 5 a.m.
I'm just telling the truth. That's all. Thank you for being my agent there, Joe.
Yeah.
I feel so much better with that one. For bookings for Peter Snowden, see Joe Bradley. Appearing one night only. Thanks very much.
Yeah, Josh Barrett tweets, looks like nothing will happen for a while. Next update in 30 minutes. Stay tuned, of course. Thanks for that, Josh. So 30 minutes, definitely, and we'll see what the track conditions are going to be like in 30 minutes. So the first review of track conditions. You know what? This is kind of the epitome of 2020. The year started off like this, and the year 2020 went to absolute rats with about 50 minutes before we landed.
Grid, 54th in those days, that's all there was on the grid. Yeah, it came through. By 10 o'clock, we get quarter points at 10 o'clock, yes? 6 hours into the race. And Jamie Campbell-Walter is already third. And I'm sitting right behind him in a Viper. And it is wet. It is proper wet, to the point of there is a river of water running across the top of Radion. Top of Eau Rouge, yeah?
Really?
Now, those of you who remember motor racing in those days, the GT cars, those Lister Storms, they were black with a big sign down the side saying Storm written at an angle, so almost 45 degrees down the side of the car, yeah? One lap, I'm sitting there behind him, and I see the word Storm, which is on the passenger door. It's on both doors. It's on that door. And I'm thinking, probably shouldn't see that much of the car. It was that much of a twitch, okay? So to the point where do you know what? I nearly lifted off. Okay, but you're sitting thinking, that's pretty sideways, Jamie. I know he's a stellar driver. I know he's a world champion. I know, but boy, and he's actually done really well to recover that. So I'm sitting there in the moment, enjoying driving this Viper around, thinking, I'm just an absolute masterclass from Jamie Campbell-Walter. Yep. Next lap, red lights, white lights, red lights, white lights. I don't mean red lights at the side of the track. I mean car headlights, tail lights. Off he goes. I think 2003 was the first year of the new pit exit at Spa being built. I'm sure that was the year that was the first time it was done. Yeah. And off it goes, over to the exit, top of Radion. Used to be at the bottom of Eau Rouge, the exit. So naturally, as a driver, your first thought is, oh, get into position. Second thought is, hope he's okay. Safety car comes up by the time we get to the come around, gone, completely cleared. You think, they've cleared that pretty quickly. Have they though? No, they haven't cleared it. What's happened is Jamie's gone off and collected the barriers at the marshal post on the pit exit backwards. The car has then looped over into the woods. Wow. So he's actually vaulted the barriers and parked a Lister Storm GT1 car on its wheels, a bit like Peter Dunbrack, it landed on its wheels, yeah? Unperturbed by this, because Jamie being this kind, I hope, Jamie, if you're listening, I'm sure he won't mind me telling this story. Jamie then has a conversation with the team owner, Lawrence Pierce. Word to the effect of, Lawrence, I've just rolled it at the top of Eau Rouge, but I'm bringing it in. He doesn't realise he's actually bolted the barriers. He's on the wrong side of the track in the woods. Yeah. Got a bit of arm cable tuning, can't quite do it. He's jabbing the starter motor. Lawrence, in his inimitable style, and this is not broadcastable, suggested that it would be wise if he didn't bring the car in, because there wasn't a lot of the back end left, like the dry sump tanks, etc., etc. Yeah. They have a row, which wasn't uncommon. Jamie gets out of the car in temper, having survived rolling a GT1 car at the top of Eau Rouge. Just think about that. Yeah. Survives that completely, opens the door, steps out in temper, completely forgets to disconnect his water bottle and his radio line, pulls his head back, twists his ankle getting out of the car.
No way.
Absolutely true story. Absolutely true. Spa 2003. There you go.
That is funny. Peter Fry, who's listening in from home in the Netherlands. Peter Fry, one of the our good friends and staff of our Creventic races, just sent me a lovely picture of Dubai, and he's in the paddock up to his knees in water. I hope you're well, Peter, and hopefully this crazy year will indeed start calming down and allowing us to get back to a track somewhere. Word is that it hasn't. Oh, sorry. Word is it hasn't stopped raining at the Nürburgring, so we're still a little bit while off. This has given the teams, as we suspected, Snowy, we did say full. Service. What I've just seen there on the Hyundai, didn't catch the number, is a full alignment going on the whole car. So we had the corner weights, the car's being corner weighted, and they're having an alignment check on the four wheels and setting the toe and the tracking at the front and back of the car and just basically resetting the car to back to where its optimum setup was.
Because there's only two of the Hyundais in the car in the race. That's the 830 and 831. That's the
didn't see which one
TCR
it was.
cars. That's the I-130 or the Velociter. So what I did spot as well was that I had got it just right. Of course, it was the colour. I should have given it away to me pretty often when I thought about it. The number one car, the Audi Sport Team car that was actually leading, I think, when it came in, driven by Dries van Tor at the time. That car, they're taking